I'm not weighing one relationship against the other. All I'm saying is that one of the lessons of Iraq was that it's better to be involved in these situations when you are aligned with international partners, and as I say, with a clear legal basis and a plan. And that's only on those terms will British military personnel be engaged.
Donald Trump has been speaking to The Sun. He has suggested Keir Starmer is pandering to Muslim voters by not backing his war against Iran, warning Britain is not such a recognisable country anymore. The president told The Sun, "Stop people from coming in from foreign lands who hate you," and he declared he never thought he would see the once most solid of all special relationship in such peril amid the biggest rupture in UK-US relations in decades. We can speak now to the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones, who joins us. Good morning to you, Darren.
Good morning.
So this has just come in, Donald Trump speaking to The Sun. Keir Starmer is pandering to Muslim voters by not backing his war against Iran.
Well, I mean, I obviously disagree with those sentiments. The Prime Minister was very clear yesterday in the House of Commons that we will only engage British assets or British forces where there is a legal basis to do so, a clear plan for why we're doing it, and if it is in the interests of our country. That's why we were not involved in the initial strikes in Iran, in the Middle East. But it is also why we've consented to American air forces using our air bases and for British jets to be in the sky in order to defend British citizens who are currently in the region.
Are you worried about Donald Trump saying that the special relationship was once most solid of all and is now in massive peril? Are you worried that the position the UK government has taken is now very much contrary to that taken by the US, and he's saying it imperils the special relationship?
Look, the US and the UK relationship is important. We all understand that, and operationally that continues as you might expect, not least right now, as we're working with American military personnel with our airfields and in the region itself. But look, these international partnerships are important in the context of military intervention. That's why you've seen the Prime Minister work closely with President Macron and Chancellor Merz, as well as the leaders of our regional allies in the Middle East.
And is that more important, Darren Jones? Actually, it's easier and more important to work with the European leaders than it is to someone like Donald Trump, who accuses you of pandering to Muslim voters.
I'm not weighing one relationship against the other. All I'm saying is that one of the lessons of Iraq was that it's better to be involved in these situations when you are aligned with international partners, and as I say, with a clear legal basis and a plan. And that's only on those terms will British military personnel be engaged.
Do you think Donald Trump's not learning the lessons of Iraq?
Well, that's the UK context. We had the whole Chilcot inquiry after Iraq. It posed a number of questions for future governments about the framework in which we might make decisions for military intervention. And the Prime Minister's been very clear, as has the National Security Council, that that's the framework in which we make decisions. And we published the summary of the Attorney General's legal advice after our deliberations on Sunday evening. And of course, the Prime Minister answered questions for most of the afternoon in the House of Commons yesterday. And I don't think anyone is able to suggest that the Prime Minister isn't conducting himself in the way that we think we should in relation to legality, plans and British interests.
But Donald Trump is not doing. I mean, by contrast, Donald Trump is not doing that.
Well, Donald Trump as the President of the United States, is up to him and the United States administration to decide what they do. We are responsible for decisions that pertain to His Majesty's Armed Forces. And as I say, we're doing that within a clear legal framework, as I think the public would expect us to.
Do you believe Donald Trump is trying to achieve regime change from the skies? That's a line taken from Keir Starmer. Is that your summary of what Donald Trump is trying to do? Achieve regime change in Iran from the skies?
Well, I think that's what the president has said himself. I mean, he's called for regime change.
He said lots of things, I think.
But he's called for regime change in Iran. And look, we don't defend the Iranian regime in any way. They're obviously abhorrent, and it's right to say that they've been the cause of huge atrocities, human rights abuses, and terror, both directly and through their proxies, either in the region and in other countries around the world. So we don't defend the Iranian regime in any way. All we're saying as a government is, as hard as it is, it's better to try to resolve these issues diplomatically. And as the Prime Minister in the House of Commons yesterday, it's historically been quite difficult to achieve regime change from the air.
The government's willing to allow the US to use our bases in defensive actions. What further defensive actions are we willing to take? Would we be willing to strike at Iran in our own self-protection? Iran has gone after a base in Cyprus, which is ours. British people are imperiled in the Middle East. We have assets in the Middle East. Would we be willing to strike defensively, as it were, against Tehran in our own interest?
Look, I'm a member of the National Security Council, so it wouldn't be right for me to comment on hypotheticals.
But it's not hypothetical because the Cyprus attack did happen. That has already happened. So my question is, there's been an attack on a British asset. Are we willing to strike back as a result of it?
Well, I can tell you what we've already been doing, and in relation to the drone attack which landed on an airfield near our base in Akrotiri in Cyprus, which is when the Prime Minister said there are British jets in the sky, what he was referring to was the RAF using some of our most advanced technology, and the F-35s and the Typhoons were there basically shooting down missiles that were being fired at us or our assets or our regional partners. We've been doing that now for the last couple of days. The difference, or we've now gone further with the request from the Americans to use our airfields, where American assets will then be able to target the launching facilities where those missiles come from in the first place, and they'll be able to use our airfields while they're doing that, where we know that missiles are threatening regional allies or British military.
But shouldn't we do that ourselves? I mean, the question is, if there is a direct threat on British nationals, British assets, shouldn't we be not just allowing the Americans to do it? We should be doing it ourselves.
Well, I say we're contributing to this in the way that I've set out, but it's also an example of how the US-UK relationship is functioning and is important, because the Americans are undertaking these operations both to support our citizens but also to support others in the region, and we're happy to contribute on that basis.
This all goes to a question about our own readiness, our own defensive capabilities. The Defence Investment Plan was scheduled for last summer, then last autumn, then the end of last year. Can you confirm, given that the world appears to be on fire, when will the Defence Investment Plan actually be published?
So it'll be published very shortly. I mean, it's not uncommon for countries to take about a year to convert what is a strategic defence plan or the strategic defence review in this.
But it was scheduled for summer, Darren. As you said, it was going to come out in summer, then in autumn, then later. So there has been a delay. You say very shortly. People will not believe you because it's not been published for the previous 6 months. When is very shortly?
Well, I'm hoping we'll be able to get to it no later than the next couple of months. But I think the public expect us, rightly, to use this process to go through every single line of military spending now and in the years ahead to make sure that we're buying the capabilities that meet the threats that we
But an awful
face.
lot might happen in the next couple of months. Witness what's happened in the last 48 hours.
Well, that is exactly why the work has to be done properly, because you can only spend that money once. And if you buy the wrong thing to be used at the wrong time in the wrong place, the public will rightly say to us, what are you doing? So it's important we do that work properly, and that's what we're doing at the moment.
Let's talk about today's spring statement. How much remodelling has had to be done because of this weekend's events in the Middle East, do you think?
Well, the OBR forecast was locked down, but the Chancellor will obviously recognise the fact in her statement today that events in the world will affect the UK economy in the future. But this is exactly why our plan is important. It's about trying to create stability in policy and public finances in the UK, trying to get government borrowing down, trying to get interest rates down, trying to help with the cost of living, so that for people who live here and for investors and businesses that want to come to the UK when the world is increasingly volatile, we're seen as a good bet for people to invest in Britain. And the Chancellor will show today that that plan is working, but it means that we have to double down on the fact that international events can affect the UK, and that's why we've got to be more resilient and more stronger ourselves, both fiscally but also crucially in relation to things like homegrown British energy, where we're not subject to international gas and gas prices in the way we are right now.
Will you look again at the 5p fuel duty increase in response to concern over oil prices? Because clearly oil prices could be going up as a result of this. Will you look again at the 5p fuel duty increase?
So we've frozen the fuel duty through to September. Later
then it's going to go up.
But that will be towards the back end of this year, when the Chancellor will be considering measures for the budget. So the spring forecast today is a forecast about economic projections.
I understand, but just generally speaking, should you, as a point of policy, be looking at that 5p fuel duty increase, bearing in mind oil prices?
Well, I'm sure the Chancellor will as we come into the budget later in the year. But of course, one of the things we want to try to achieve is for this war in the Middle East to end as quickly as possible, because it's not just in our military benefit to do that, it's in our economic benefit too.
Reform yesterday published a dossier saying that Rachel Reeves had been associated with the vice chairman of a Leeds Council of Mosques, who is accused of glorifying terrorism and anti-Semitism. This guy's now been suspended by Labour. The line from Rachel Reeves is that she did not know about his abhorrent views. Do you think if you meet someone 27 times over the last 15 years, as a politician, your job is to find out what their views are and whether you agree with them?
Look, I don't know about the individual circumstances in this case, but Rachel's been very clear that even though she met frequently with the person in question, she wasn't aware of what he'd been saying and doing in other circumstances when she'd not been with him. I think any listener would recognise that's fair enough. And as soon as these comments had become public, of course, the Labour Party suspended his membership, as you might expect. And Rachel was very clear that she found
it's just interesting in the context of Donald Trump accusing the Prime Minister of pandering to Muslim voters, I suppose.
I wouldn't connect the two in any way, quite frankly, because the suggestion that British policy decisions would be taken differently in that context is just wrong. We take it on the basis of law, of proper government, and of making sure that we're leading on British interests, and of course, as a Labour government, on the basis of our own values.
Darren Jones, good to speak to you. Thank you for taking the time.
Pleasure.
And that is the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones, there.
And I think a couple of interesting things. I mean, his response to Donald Trump, who has given this interview to The Sun's Harry Cole, and I've been having a read through it. I mean, it really is quite stark.
It's going to have some legs, that interview, isn't it?
Yeah, I really think it will. And I know that people will say, well, look, we've already had Donald Trump criticised. We know he's a bit cross. But this is not that. This is beyond that. It's Donald Trump saying, you know, Keir Starmer's very different. He's also talking, Donald Trump, about having a much better relationship with France. He said it ultimately doesn't matter if the UK doesn't help. Starmer should have helped. He should have, but it's not going to matter. France has been great. They've all been great. The UK has been much different from the others. And he goes on to say that things under Keir Starmer are different to previous relationships with prime ministers.
And one question will be, and you may never get a straight answer from Darren Jones at this point, is that does Keir Starmer politically, having spent 18 months cozying up to Donald Trump, politically in this world where, you know, there's a new poll out saying the Greens are on 21%, you know, 2 points away from being the biggest party by a poll, does actually he want to be a bit distant from Donald Trump? Is that a new domestic political aim from Keir Starmer? Is he happy with that?
Yeah, it's possible.